It's really good to be speaking to Kirsty Lark. I'm from Killara Distillery, all the way in Tasmania in Australia. Kirsty, welcome to Clandestine Whisky.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic to have a chat with you because you have your own distillery in your own right, but you grew up in a distillery, which is so rare because your father was Bill Lark, one of the sort of pioneers of Australian whisky down there in Tasmania.
Yes, yeah, my parents sort of pioneered the modern distilling industry in Australia, really.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. You grew up next door to the distillery?
Well, I certainly grew up with a still outside my bedroom door. So our house was the first distillery in Tasmania to be licensed for over 150 years. And the name of my distillery, Killara, comes from the name of the street where I grew up on, where I had the still outside my bedroom door. It's actually the same house that I'm back living in now. So I'm actually sitting in my old bedroom, which is now my office. But yeah, no, it's been a bit of a journey for us all, really.
Fantastic. And Ted, what was it like? What was your first taste of whiskey? Because most of us wouldn't taste whiskey till we're, perhaps in our late teens, early 20s. But I'm guessing it's...
Oh, I was just talking about this to someone else the other day. I'm like, I feel like I should come up with a really good story about my first taste of whiskey, but I don't actually know when it was. So, yeah, I sort of have grown up with it here, and I don't really recall having a first taste of it.
And how has it been for you in growing up for so many years in Tasmania and now so many distilleries in Tasmania? What's it been like for you and for your parents seeing the work that the foundations you've laid have allowed so many other people to come together and actually build an industry down there?
Yeah, well, it is. It's amazing what mum and dad have done, especially, dad's always been so open with his knowledge, and he sort of set about to share his knowledge to create an industry. He knew that one distillery wasn't going to make it work. He wanted other people to get involved, and so he was very generous with his time and his knowledge, and he still is. And that's something that's really continued on, and why I think the Tasmanian industry especially is, it's really collegial. We're a family. We all support each other, and that's fantastic. And it's just really grown, and it grows from strength to strength. When I started Killara 5 years ago, there was probably about 20 distilleries, but now there's close to 60 or 70, which is amazing. It's a real industry boom at the moment.
Absolutely. And so 60 or 70 just in Tasmania?
Yep.
Wow, that's amazing, because I think the last time stats that I read, there was perhaps about 50. There's obviously hundreds of distilleries in Australia, only about 50 making or going to make whiskey. That's an incredible incredible growth.
Yeah, it's huge. And I mean, not all of those distilleries are making whiskey, but a vast majority of them are. Tasmania is perfect for it. We've got the climate, we've got, the beautiful water, the great barley, and we've got the skills, and it's all happening down here. It's fantastic. It's really exciting to be part of this industry.
I'm really intrigued because, say you started, it was like 2016, I think, from then you started your distillery up. Now, and everything you do is, try and source quite locally, including your still. Now, over in England and in Scotland, I believe, obviously, Forsyth's the major still provider. I think there's, a waiting list of, 18 months or even 3 years or something. What was the wait time for yours?
I was really, really lucky. I decided to start Killara in March 2016, and I had my still up and running by August 2016. But that's really an exception to the rule. I feel very lucky that that's the case. I got that still made locally, and I was really lucky that they now no longer make stills. But I've got another still on order at the moment from another local maker, and that's taken, I think, close to 2 years, and should be ready within the next couple of months. So there's a big waiting list to get locally made stills, but it's fantastic that new still makers are starting up. So I think we've got 2 or 3 down here in Tasmania, and there's another couple up on the mainland. So we can here get locally made equipment, which is great.
It's a whole new industry, isn't it? It's just the still making. What company doesn't want a 2-year wait list? It's amazing, isn't it? We're in the wrong business. We should be making stills.
But I
Yeah,
mean, and that has a flow and effect as well, because when Lark first started, there was no coopers in Tasmania. Now there's 3 dedicated coopers that are pretty much focusing on the whiskey industry down here, which is
really.
fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah,
And they're not serving the wine industry at all, because obviously wine in Tasmania is huge as well.
it is. Yes. So I don't know. They might be doing
Yeah.
they might be servicing the wine industry, but they're certainly, their main focus is the whiskey industry.
And I know the sort of the barrels that you're using are quite they're a little bit smaller than traditional wine barrels. Will you
Yes.
be using any sort of Tasmanian ex wine barrels, any sort of Australian port type barrels at all, or?
Yes, yes. So I already have released some whiskey from Australian tawny port barrels, and it's fantastic. I recently won an award for one of them, which was great, and I've sent off another barrel or another whiskey from another barrel for another award. So, they're sort of my preferred type of whiskey, the ones that have been matured in a fortified barrel, and increasingly it's getting harder to source overseas ones. So looking at the local market for Tasmanian and Australian wine and fortifieds.
Yeah. Well, of course, one of the differences between Australian and American and Scottish English whiskey is the maturation process. Australia, I think you can do after 2 years, it can become whiskey, and it's in smaller barrels. Are you still laying down larger barrels for longer term maturation?
Yeah, I certainly am. Like a lot of other Australian distilleries, I've started off with those 20-litre casks, but I moved away from those to the quarter casks or the 100 litres. So I've got quite a large stock level of those, and now moving into the 200s, and I've even got some 300-litre barrels sitting around as well.
Yeah.
So really looking towards the long term for those.
And how often are you distilling?
Well, I've just built a new production site out at Richmond, so I haven't been distilling whiskey for the past 12 or so months, but I'm about to start getting back into that. The brew's starting to happen on the 1st of May, and then I'll be kicking off my distilling schedule for the whiskey, which is fantastic.
Okay. So that caused perhaps a little a gap in your releases for a little while in 2 or 3 years' time, or you got sufficient stock to cover that?
Possibly. I think I've got enough stock to cover that, and as long as I can manage that gap well, then I think it'll be fine.
Yeah. And you must be in sort of one of those enviable positions, because sometimes your bottling, your outrun is perhaps 30, 35 bottles, which is, I love it. And
Yes,
all your labels are handwritten with the number on
they
there.
are. Yes.
And how do you manage that? All your die-hard fans who want every expression that you release.
Well, I guess I can't please everyone, unfortunately, as much as I would love to, but I certainly have people that are trying to collect bottles from every release, and I try my hardest to help them out. So quite regularly, the whiskey will be sold out on the website, but I always keep stock at my cellar door. So people that come out to the cellar door are rewarded for their efforts, so they get to try the whiskey, and it's there available to purchase as well.
But also, you're one of the, sort of the few female whiskey brand owners in the world. You see sort of quite a community sort of building around women in whiskey. Are you involved in that at all?
Oh, for sure. I'm the president of the Australian Women in Distilling Association, which is an association I set up a number of years ago to really promote women working within the industry, because there's some amazing women there and they just don't get the recognition really that they deserve. So set about getting the organisation up and running to really promote them and to, promote education for the distilling industry as well. So we offer scholarships a couple of times a year, and get together and have networking events and, really promote the fact that there's some amazing women working within the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great thing. And you getting over to abroad at all internationally with your whiskies to show them?
Yeah, so just had a release with the Boutique Whiskey Company, some of the whiskey, which has been fantastic and really well received. So I'd like to start exporting some of that at a later date as well. I'd really like to get over to some of the whiskey events that are happening in Europe and the UK. I don't imagine it will be this year or even next year, but maybe the year after.
Well, we're hopeful that we're sort of supposed to be out of, lockdown in sort of mid to late June. So I'm sure there'll be restrictions still, but yeah, we'll have to see when this sort of third wave hits us. But I think everyone's missing all the whiskey festivals. We've all got used to our Zoom tastings.
Yeah.
How's it affected business for you in Tasmania? Have you been locked down on the island there?
We've been really lucky here. We've had fairly few cases of COVID. We were initially locked down last year, this time last year, but we sort of stayed in our own little bubble, and all the borders for the states all closed, so we didn't allow any entrance into the state, which meant we could travel freely around, and things were sort of normal but sort of not. And it's great now that we're starting to let some of the states back in, and tourism and stuff is starting. So I've got visitors coming to the cellar door. I'm on the Tas Whisky Week committee, so we usually hold Tas Whisky Week in the second week of August each year. Last year we had to, well, initially we cancelled the event, but then we did restrictions eased, so we did a couple of pop-up events and also a virtual event. But this year we're going ahead with the full week, so we'll have, I think we've got close to 30 events being conducted around the state, and also we're doing the virtual event again, which will be fantastic. So it's good to see some of the other distillers and in the community and get out there a bit more, which is it's nice to see people again face to face.
Yeah, I think from a very, very selfish and personal point of view, you should perhaps rethink the timing in August to make it in January or February, so the international travellers from Europe, we can escape the European winter and get some Australian sun and come and visit you.
Well, that's kind of why we have it in August. So it's, in the winter, it's perfect time. We, get the fire pits out and the glasses of whiskey, and, it's a really good time to be in Tassie.
Yeah, I always try and get over. Well, I have tried to get in there sort of that whole January time. I can't stand the English winter. How many expressions do you think or have you released now? Do you think?
So I do individual cask releases. So each barrel is bottled individually. I think I've done about 12 now. So although they were barreled or filled in sequential order, I really only release them when they're ready. So they're not been released in sequential order. But yeah, I think I've done about 12.
Fantastic. And which one of those has proved the most popular, or one that your favourite? Can you have a favourite?
Can I have a favourite? I don't know. Like I said, I really like the tawny port ones. So the current release of that is KD13. And that's fantastic. I really like it. It's bottled at 56%. It's come from a 100 litre quarter cask. It's got those amazing Christmas cake, raisins, fruit, the fruits and spices flavours that you would expect from a port barrel, as well as that malt and oak influence. So that's sort of my favourite one. But then I also managed to get hold of an old Lafroig barrel. So I matured my whiskey in a tawny barrel and then put it into the Lafroig barrel to rest for about 12 weeks.
Yep. And
then I've bottled that. So it's picked up some of those really nice Isla peat characteristics, and peated whiskey fans are going crazy over that, which is good.
Yeah. It's actually amazing. I literally last night, and I need to remember the name. I think it's Outlaw Rum in Scotland. And they sent me some samples down. And they have finished one of their rums in an Isla barrel.
And
cool. Yeah, and you can totally pick it up. It's and imagine that sort of, probably that sort of same period, just to get those nuances. So it's amazing that short period what difference it can actually make. It's actually intriguing to see that. I mean, in Tasmania growing up, what was the availability of Scottish and American whiskies like?
I guess when I was sort of in my late teens, early 20s, it was very, stock standard. The main ones available were sort of, Glenfiddich, Macallan, Glenmorangie, Ardbeg, Lafroig, a few of the really bigger distilleries. Every now and then, if you were really lucky, could get Edradour, and trying to think, Glenlivet, probably Glenfarclas was available. But
okay, so it's not
it was pretty good. But now it's fantastic, the different ones you can get. There's all the different independent bottlers that are producing some fantastic whiskies, and all the different expressions that the distilleries are getting. Whereas before we would maybe get the 10 and the 12-year-old, now we're getting a full range from 8 up to 25 or whatever the distillery decides to release. So it's really good.
And what are the import duties like? Are they quite horrendous?
Yes. Duty tax, alcohol tax over here is phenomenally high. I think we're the 3rd highest country in the world for alcohol tax.
Really?
So yeah, I think out of a bottle of whiskey, it's about $30 to $40 per bottle just in tax.
Yeah, and that's probably not too dissimilar over here. Perhaps a little bit more than the UK, but we're pretty horrific, I think.
Yeah,
but it's very interesting, especially in terms of gin. Whereas you see the big manufacturers of gin, you can see it on the supermarket shelves for £15. A craft gin tends to be perhaps £35. And the makers I've spoken to have said, a lot of it is due to taxation. I don't fully understand why they're paying more as a craft distillery than the big boys, but there must be a reason somewhere in there. Because you make gin as well.
I do, yes. Yeah, so I make a range of gins. I do vodka, I do localized liqueurs, and I do brandy as well. So the new production site that I've just built is on 26 acres, and on that planning to grow as much as I can for use in the distillery. So we're about to start getting the field ready to grow barley. We've got an area set aside for a vineyard for brandy, and then we've got the top paddock for the orchard and for the herb and for the gin garden.
Oh wow, that'd be amazing! I mean, I'm in obviously the UK. I'm in Kent, and we're obviously renowned for our orchards and our apples. And I'd love to do an apple brandy, Calvados style drink. But I'm not sure what the market is for that, unfortunately.
Well, I plan on. There's a local apple orchard just down the road from us. Actually, I was talking to him about getting some cider, and so he's really keen for me to make some apple brandy, which would be great.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a more complicated process than the normal sort of brandy in the apple brandy. Obviously, it's a cider, and it goes through a slightly different process, isn't there? I think.
I suppose the apples get converted into cider, and then pressed, and the juice gets fermented, and then it's distilled in the similar way to whiskey. All distilling is fairly similar. It's just the different products that you use. There's differences.
Yeah, and I should look into a little niche brand and see where it goes. Kirsty, anything you'd like to say, sort of finally, about the whole Australian or Tasmanian specifically whiskey scene or whiskies in general?
So the Australian whiskey scene is fantastic at the moment. It's growing ahead in leaps and bounds, and we're getting a lot of worldwide recognition, which is fantastic. But in the grand scheme of things, we're still only very small. I was listening to a talk not so long ago where they said that Australian spirits make up only 1% of sales in Australia. So, there's certainly a lot of room for us to grow, and it's so great that a lot of people are deciding to get into the industry and, really grow that and show all the consumers and all the local people, especially, that Australia and especially Tasmania can make, worldwide recognised spirits. Yeah.
But I guess, you're also operating in the luxury sector.
Yes.
As opposed to the normal, pouring sector. So it's always going to be minimal, isn't it? But far better to be a luxury product than a common garden one, I think. But
yeah, I guess. But I mean, it's economies of scale, really. Like my still at the moment is only 600 litres. My new still will be 1,400 litres. So I'm sort of definitely very boutique, very hands-on, very small scale. But there are some distilleries in Tasmania that are starting up that are going to be big, and so they'll be able to produce those whiskies at the lower costs and gin at the lower costs to compete with those not the lower end of the market, but the entrance level of the market, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Kirsty, thank you very much indeed for your time. It's been great talking to you. I can't wait to get over and taste your whiskies.
Well, I can't wait to show you around.
Thank you very much.